Good afternoon on this Monday, November 21st. This is your 28storms.com tropical weather update. We don't typically see hurricanes in the eastern Pacific during the mid and latter half of November, but that is exactly what we are dealing with this afternoon. We have Hurricane Kenneth, and as of the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, is packing maximum sustained winds of 80 miles per hour. And check out the forecast. By 4 a.m. on Tuesday, the Hurricane Center does believe that Kenneth will become a major hurricane, and that would make this storm the latest forming major hurricane in the eastern Pacific since the satellite era began. Of course, the good news is that the storm is expected to remain on a general west to west-northwest heading away from land. Despite some of the model disagreement that we see on the latest spaghetti model plot, none of the models are taking this system toward the north anywhere close to Mexico. So again, it's fairly likely that this will remain a storm that stays out to sea. This was an early morning microwave satellite pass taken of Hurricane Kenneth, and ordinarily before you even see a sign of an eye wall-like feature beginning to develop on the standard infrared or visible, it will become a little bit more apparent first and foremost on the microwave satellite. And earlier this morning we were already seeing indications of an eye wall-like feature beginning to develop. And as the afternoon has transpired, we have seen growing indications of an eye beginning to develop on the latest visible satellite animation, and overall this is just a very favorable and good looking pattern for this storm to develop further into a stronger hurricane. We can see that the outflow channels are not being restricted by any vertical wind shear in the area, and it's also apparent that no dry air is advecting into the center, otherwise we would not be seeing significant convective flare-ups near the eye wall. Here is a look at the regional water vapor animation, and we can easily see the coast of Mexico and the Baja Peninsula is located in this area. Fortunately, this is a trough that's just to the north of the storm. There was a chance that this trough would have steered the storm more toward the north into Mexico a few days ago, but that trough is now beginning to lift out toward the northeast, and we do have subtle mid-level ridging beginning to come in from the west, and that is going to keep the storm moving away from the coastal portions of Mexico. So again, we're not worried about any landfall threats with this hurricane, and if anything, this trough is helping to ventilate the system, and you see some of the exhaust being advected off toward the northeast. So just a very favorable pattern, and it's really no surprise that the Hurricane Center anticipates this to become a major hurricane, and the sea surface temperatures are still favorable for the next couple of days. Again, the all-important 26 degrees Celsius isotherm is still well to the west here, so it's got very light vertical wind shear and favorable sea surface temperatures, so this system has got all the indications of becoming a major hurricane. But Hurricane Kenneth is not the only system we're monitoring in the tropics. We've been talking about this area of low pressure in the central Atlantic for quite a while now, and the latest tropical weather outlook from the Hurricane Center is giving this feature a 60% chance of developing into a subtropical storm within the next 2 days. There is a lot of model disagreement with this storm, and we see that several models are taking this toward the northeast, but there are also quite a few models that take this more in a easterly track, and then they begin to loop it around, which would prolong the life cycle of the storm, but that remains to be seen. The area of low pressure in question is not fully tropical, otherwise it would have no chance of development in conditions like we are experiencing in the central Atlantic. We have a lot of dry air coming into the circulation, but the one thing that is fueling convection near the center is the fact that this low originated from the mid to upper levels, and it is becoming a little bit more tropical with each and every convective burst, but it's never going to be fully tropical in nature, otherwise it would dissipate, especially considering that the storm is beginning to move into slightly cooler water temperatures. We're talking below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not conducive for tropical storms and hurricanes. But I do expect this to acquire the subtropical storm classification by the Hurricane Center within the next couple of days. The good news is that the storm poses no threat to the Caribbean, Bermuda, United States, or Canada, and that is because it will more than likely get picked up by this trough approaching from the west. And whether or not it makes another loop out here, that is still something that we really can't nail down at this time, but it's still going to remain well offshore. This is the latest 12Z GFS model forecast, and our eastern Pacific hurricane continues moving safely to the west due to mid-level ridging aloft. And this is one of the models that does have our system making a loop in the Atlantic, but even if it starts to begin moving a little bit more toward the west in the medium range, it's going to begin dissipating as it will encounter yet another upper level low situated fairly close to Bermuda, so we can expect fairly strong southwest winds aloft if that pattern were to verify. The 12Z run of the Canadian CMC handles Hurricane Kenneth in much the same manner. It's taking the system well off toward the west-northwest and out of the picture, and it also appears to be slightly more correct with the thinking that this storm will just simply recurve more toward the northeast and then get picked up by that second trough without really making much of a significant loop around the central Atlantic. Finally, this is the 12Z run of the ECMWF. We can see the evolution of our subtropical system in the Atlantic. By 48 hours, it appears to be fully absorbed by a non-tropical trough as it inches closer toward the Azores Islands. And we still have a fairly strong area of low pressure. It's down to 1001 millibars just to the west of the islands by 72 hours, but it would be fully non-tropical by this point. Nevertheless, I guess there is still a slight chance of some gale force winds, but by day 4, the ECMWF is still keeping the area of low pressure just offshore, and it's also beginning to weaken due to the fact that the stronger forcing is located well to the north, closer to the Atlantic provinces of Canada, where we have a non-tropical 987 millibar surface low beginning to develop. Beyond that point, I do not foresee any other tropical disturbances on the horizon, so this may be the final hurrah for hurricane season 2011, which would certainly be some good news because we wouldn't like to go out with a lot of damage or destruction. But as always, we will have more daily video updates until the very end of hurricane season. We haven't missed a day since June 1st, and we're just going to ride it all the way through the official end, so keep it tuned, and we'll have the tropics covered.